Hi friends, and welcome into my home. Our home here at Mark's Minis, where beginning and novice painters like me are exploring the incredible benefits offered to us by the new generation of speed paints and processes. In particular, the Army Painter speed paints have really changed the game for novice and beginning painters like me. When I discovered them and the incredible benefits they offered to the quality of my work, I started posting fanatically. And that led directly to the creation of this channel. Since then, superb artists in the industry have been coming to me asking me to do interviews with them to promote their classes and local game conventions. How can I say no? So today we have a very special guest who needs no introduction in the world of miniatures. He's a master artist, an accomplished painting instructor, and a creative force in our community. His work is amazing, and notably he specializes in large models and oil paint. He has a large following on social media and is interested in promoting his class at this local gaming convention, KublaCon, coming up at the end of May. I am absolutely excited and honored to have him as a guest on our channel, and I'm sure you'll want to see this fascinating discussion all the way to the end. It will be loaded with great tips for beginners and sound advice for even experienced painters. And please stay watching to the end, where we'll have a wrap-up and a preview of upcoming videos. Thanks so much for watching, and please enjoy this fascinating conversation with AJ Klein. Hi friends, and welcome back to the channel Mark's Minis, where today I'm really excited and honored and privileged to have another alpha player right in our space, a professional miniatures painter, and he's a teacher at the KublaCon local game convention that's coming up. We're going to talk about that. And AJ, we haven't met yet, so of course I looked you up and was amazed at all the artwork that you've done, and look forward to see some images of that. And the reason we met is because of basically the chatbot got us here. Anyone who starts a YouTube channel is asking the chatbot for advice. And some of the advice I got was improve your skills, work on yourself. So I took a class, and that's how I met Michael, and Michael introduced me to Dev and then to you. So I'm so happy and pleased to meet expert painters right in our space. Why the channel got started is because when I was a new painter, just novice, I was unhappy with my results, and I got a Kickstarter, and I got a whole bunch of miniatures, and started doing a lot of research. How can I get these guys to the table looking okay? So that's when I finally discovered the new paints, contrast, speed paints, and express colors, and they changed the game for me dramatically. And I started producing pretty good quality miniatures in not a lot of time. Even the big ones, these big Titan guys, I'm knocking down in just 4 or 5 hours, which is pretty good for a large model. And then for something more basic, something that's a lot of feathers, I knocked this guy out in an hour. And he's pretty good looking. He's above the tabletop level. So for me to go from a novice to intermediate, let's say, pretty much overnight because of new products, new materials, new processes, I started painting fanatically, posting everything, and people suggested I start a channel. So here we are. We're exploring the incredible impact of the new paints on the novice painters, a fact largely overlooked by the painting community at large. And in the interview, I'm going to get your take on the new paints that have been coming out, and that'll be interesting for us. So, AJ, I'm so happy to meet you. Tell us a little bit about yourself. I think you mentioned back in the day, like so many of us, I got started with Dungeons and Dragons. I think you got started with Warhammer or D&D yourself. Tell us how you got going with the miniatures.
Yeah, so I got started going into miniatures and miniature painting in 2002 when I was at Cambridge University. I did a study abroad during high school, so I was able to have time to myself outside of classes, and I guess nerds find each other when we're abroad somehow, right? So, I found Games Workshop. I was like, what is this? And I've kind of been hooked ever since. So now it's 21 years later, which is scary to think. And I'm still painting. I paint very differently today than I did then, but definitely started in the wargaming community, and it's a great community to learn to paint in because you do have so many miniatures, and each miniature can be a practice piece for the next piece for the next piece. the downside to that is sometimes you have to go back and repaint your first miniature because you learn stuff along the way. But I think a lot of us come at it from that angle, from some
I
kind
want
of
to
game
ask you
aspect.
next about your experience as a painting competition instructor, judge at KublaCon. I think you mentioned you're fairly new to the KublaCon local game convention. Tell us a little bit about how you got hooked up with KublaCon and what's
Sure.
been your experience doing the classes there.
So when I moved to California in the Bay Area in 2015, again, nerds find each other. So I was hanging out at one of the many game stores we're lucky to have in the area, and I was sitting down painting some miniatures. Someone mentioned to me about the KublaCon game convention and how there was a painting contest. So that's what first drove me to go to the contest and to the convention as a whole. But I do game the entire weekend that I'm there with friends. I teach classes now. I taught last year. The two classes I taught last year, one was on oil painting, because that's one of my specialties. I do a lot of my work in oil paints, as opposed to what most painters are used to, which is acrylic paints or washes. Um, so I have a different take on that for the most part. Not that I don't use acrylics, it's just I've taken a lot of time to study oil painting. Similar to your experience, you were frustrated with something and you had to find a new way to go about it. And my first instinct was to switch the medium and kind of switch the game up and break all the rules. So that's what that class was kind of about, and kind of making it feel not scary. A lot of people hear the word oil paint and they think, oh my gosh, it's scary, it's messy, I'm going to get stuff everywhere, it's just going to run. How am I going to keep colors from mushing into each other? If you break it down into little steps, it's not that bad. And that's kind of what the class was about. And then the other class I taught last year was about photography for miniature painters. I'm also a photographer.
Awesome.
Um, and I know that's something that a lot of us have struggled with
Yes.
in the gaming community, in the figure painting community. You can see some marvelous paint jobs out there, but if it's a blurry photo or the depth of field isn't right or the lighting isn't right, you've ruined all that work that you've done trying to share that photo on Instagram or Facebook or whatever social media you choose. So I really wanted to give my ideas to that and how we can work as a community to be better at that. So that was a good class. And then this year we're going to talk about playing with light. So we have a special model that I've been licensed to use for the class that Michael's actually going to be printing for us. So every student will get a copy of this bust, and we'll work on how to use light and shadow to tell the story within the figure. Because I do concentrate nowadays mostly on large figures and artistic figures as opposed to wargaming figures, it's important to tell a story. It's important to create atmosphere. And the way that we do that in painting is with light and shadow.
Wow, you touched on a lot of really somewhat advanced topics here. I have broken ground with oil paints, and the combination of oil paints and speed paints is real powerful. We're going to be
Yes,
exploring that on the channel. Yes, we're going to break ground. We're going to break the ice and reveal the mystery that is oil painting on miniatures. It's not that
awesome.
tough, and
It's not.
you can get in for about $30 worth of stuff, and you're set for a lot of painting for that. So,
Yeah,
uh,
the oil paints last forever. I've got several sets from a lot of different companies. Some from your standard stuff that you get at Michael's. Your Winsor Newton series acrylics, golden acrylics, or oil paints. Um, but what's really great now is there's actually a lot of miniature companies that are also producing oil paints. So
wow,
Scale 75 has oil paint range for miniatures,
wow,
and so does AK-47 or Abteilung 502.
my.
It's the same company. They have miniatures, oil paints for miniatures, and those are just fantastic to work with.
Oh my! I'm gonna have to find some links and put them in the description. This is totally news for me. So exciting news for all of us painters. Oil paints is a whole nother branch, a whole nother chapter that you can explore once you get your basics going, for sure. Wow, that's awesome,
Awesome.
AJ. You hit on a really a lot of awesome advanced topics there. Of course, like I said, most of our audience here are beginners, novice painters, and intermediate painters, experienced painters looking for new tips. What sort of tips do you have for the novice painters that we have here? In particular, a lot of my audience complains about not being able to get the brush moving. They're just hesitant. They just can't get moving. Maybe having trouble selecting colors. What can you do to break the ice there, AJ? How can you get these brushes moving?
So that's a really good question. And I think everybody struggles with that from time to time. I know there's been times, especially in the last couple of years with COVID, where, we're all home all the time. We feel like we should be painting because we're home all the time, but we don't necessarily have the effort, the willpower, the motivation, the drive, whatever it is. But I would say just even if it's 10 minutes that you're sitting down, sit down and do something. Even if it's just keeping a journal and saying, I'm going to paint this part of the armor blue. I'm going to paint this part of the hair red, and make some kind of progress on something a day, or every other day if that's better for your schedule. But for me, I find keeping a schedule, writing something down, making it purposeful, and doing it in small chunks as opposed to looking at a big figure and going, oh my gosh, this is so big. How do I tackle it? Because if we do that, it can get really intimidating. I have large pieces that I'm intimidated by still. I've got a 1-to-1 scale Tinkerbell that's scaring the heck out of me. There's only 10 copies in the world. I have one of them.
Wow.
And it's one of those that a good friend of mine painted the box art for, Pascal Ruse. And I have one of the copies, and it's huge and it's intimidating. And when it's 1-to-1 scale, you're looking at it and you're like, oh man, I don't want to do it. I'm scared. And just do a little something with it, even if it's just, oh, I glued this together today. That's progress. Break it into small chunks, make it digestible.
Awesome. One of the sub themes of our channel here is paint by numbers. So as you're watching my videos, you'll often see when I'm so happy we're making progress. I'll say, you see, we've broken it down. It's just paint by numbers. We're just doing the cloak. We're just doing the boots. We pick the right paint with the right consistency. We load the brush right. We let the paint do the work for us with the speed paints and contrast paints. It gets down to paint by numbers, and we love that. Breaking the problem down into smaller problems. AJ, thanks so much for giving us those beginner level tips. Now I want to get inside your head. When you look at a new model, walk us through your thought process. How are you going to break down this problem, this daunting problem of starting a large model? Go ahead and walk us through your thinking here.
Sure. So a lot of what I do at the beginning is I put the whole thing together. That's my biggest thing, mostly because the part of the painting process that I dislike the most is the building aspect. It's probably the most challenging for me, considering it sets a lot of the stage for what I'm going to do. I always put a lot of emphasis on it and importance on it, that first step of what am I going to do. So writing stuff down is really important on a big figure. Having a notebook, keeping a list of things you want to do. And then I look at how I want the atmosphere to come across when you look at a model. Do I want it to be dark and menacing? Do I want it to be sad? Do I want it to be bright and airy? Am I looking at the light, and is it one light source, or do we have OSL going on where we have a glowing object? Is it a nighttime or a daytime scene? Because that's going to affect some of my color choices. If it's daytime, we're going to have warmer colors, yellows, reds. If it's nighttime, we're going to have some cooler colors, blues, greens, whites, grays. So having to kind of forcing myself to put stuff down on paper has always been a big help for me. I don't always follow it in the end because sometimes it just takes you to a different place as you're painting it. But having that guideline and that understanding going into it, I think really helps. And a big part of that, I think, starts with the priming of the model. So I prime all my models black, and then I do zenithal highlight usually. And when I say zenithal, I basically mean that I'm painting white over the black, but in a specific area. I use my airbrush for that, but you can use rattle cans, spray cans. Doesn't really matter as long as you're getting some kind of air. You can even do it with a brush. I've done it with a brush. When it's done with a brush, we call it painting in grisaille or grayscale. So you can do it in any way. You don't have to have specific fancy tools for this. And I think that's important for everybody to understand. Basic brushes that you get from a craft store, some decent paints with some pigment, and you can get started. And a lot of what I do with big figures, you have to emphasize light and shadow in order to get it across, because there is some kind of a story. And to give you what I mean by saying a big figure, I've got some of my work next to me. I'll bring in front of the camera so you can see how large. Because I know a lot of us who are used to gaming figures who are thinking, D&D scale 28 millimeter, or Games Workshop 32 heroic scale figure. But I work in much larger spaces. So
as you're talking here, we're going to go picture in picture. We're going to show some of your art on the screen. We can put that in post.
So here is
wow.
One of them. I think we can kind of see it.
Nice. Yes, I saw a photograph of this one.
Yeah.
Incredible. So this is the god Zeus. So everyone should be familiar with Zeus, because most of my audience comes from the mythic battles pantheon, and we basically just got finished painting most of the Greek pantheon.
Great.
Incredible rendition of Zeus there.
Yeah, so you can see how large he is compared to my body. It's a much larger figure. And this is technically 54 millimeter scale, but because of the asymmetrical base and everything that's going on, it just looks really big and daunting. And then we have 75 millimeter scale, which is a little bit bigger, even though the piece itself isn't as dynamic per se. The scale of the figure itself is going to be larger. It's going to give you more surface to work with, more things that you can do. You can do freehand. You can play with shadows. There's a lot of fun stuff you can do, and that's why I think I like the bigger figures. As I've gotten older, the smaller figures, not that I don't paint them, they're just harder for me. They take more time. I can actually paint some of the bigger pieces faster because there's these big areas that I can use oil paints or different techniques like feathering and a little bit of dry brushing and wet blending to get area effects really, really quickly. So that helps. And I think understanding how to use your tools, and that every tool that you have, whether it's a specific type of paint, whether it's a specific type of brush, specific type of layering technique, they're all going to be for a specific purpose. So if you understand how to use those different techniques, even if you're not the best at it, it's going to give you an advantage over others who don't, who just paint, oh, look, my armor is blue. Oh, look, my armor is, silver, whatever it is. But if you understand those basic little techniques, it really makes it jump, like you said, go from tabletop to above tabletop to something better.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah, you touched on some great topics there, and I'd like to point out, viewers, that AJ is more or less giving us a future outline of what our channel is going to be talking about. As we all grow together to become better painters, we're going to start exploring more and more advanced topics. Tell us a little bit about your presence on social media these days. So
the only thing that I have is just Facebook. So you can find me, AJ Klein, Klein. So I'm on Facebook, but that's pretty much the only social I do. So you can find me there. For those in the Bay Area group, there's a couple Bay Area paint Facebook channels I'm in. There's also in larger realm of things, there's the heavier metal group on Facebook, Painters Motivating Painters, and the other one, Trapped Under Plastic, is another good one. These are all forums that you can go present your work. You can get critiques from. People will help you and ask for constructive criticism and understand that not everybody's going to like everything if you ask for constructive criticism on the internet. But it has helped me grow, so I like to do the same and give back.
Okay, that's awesome. Awesome information, AJ. Really appreciate that. So now I want to just again review what class you're teaching at KublaCon and what can we expect there. And uh, and I just want to point out that the KublaCon Game Convention, Burlingame, California, May 26 through 29. And it's an awesome family-friendly event. You can bring your kids. Parents, bring your kids. You can take them to a gaming area for kids. You can sign for them. They will watch your kids. They will take, they'll be entertained. They'll be totally engrossed in games while you can go and do your thing. It's really great. There's all kinds of fun for whole families. Great family fun event. And at KublaCon, AJ, you're going to be teaching a class. Only one class? What can we expect from you at KublaCon?
Yeah, so this year just one class. It's all I had time for. So we're gonna take a class on playing with light, as it refers to miniature painting. So this is not necessarily a class for people who are only comfortable doing advanced heavy lifting type stuff. For your alpha players, this is for anybody who wants to come. One of the things that I think makes my classes unique is I can help distill the information from the heavy technical side of things down to something that everybody can handle. And I'll get right in there, and we're going to actually paint together the same bust. So you'll have something at the end that you'll have started with me to take home and finish on your own. And this is a bust, technically, where it's not a full figure, and it's a figure that has a lot of potential to play with color and light and ambiance and mood and atmosphere. So I think there's lots of different ways to interpret it. It's from Nordley's Miniatures. They've given me the rights to use it for the class.
Nice.
They're a fantastic miniature company, so please visit them if you can.
I'll put a link in the description.
And yeah, I'm excited to paint with everybody. It's only going to be open to 10 slots because we only have so much time, and I want to make sure that all my students have enough time with me as a teacher so that they can have their questions answered. So we're limiting it to 10 people, but if it goes well, we'll take the show on the road and we'll do more classes.
Terrific. Well, thanks so much. That's all the time we have for today, AJ. Really appreciate you visiting us. We got so much cool new information from you. Got some encouraging tips for beginners. Got a couple ideas for advanced topics for the future. And I'm just so excited, looking forward to KublaCon. Thanks so much, AJ, and I look forward to collaborating with you in the future.
Yeah.
We hopefully can do some more tutorials. If he can teach this guy who's all thumbs some new tricks, you guys are going to like that. So
We can teach everybody.
Thanks again, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Thanks, AJ.
Thanks.
Wow, that was a lot of fun talking with AJ. Let's try to recount some of his sage advice. Always have a little bit of painting to do every day, and start keeping a notebook. I've decided to take that advice. I found this old notebook, and I'm going to start writing down stuff about painting. And please don't forget, KublaCon Local Gaming Convention, Burlingame, end of May. The video upcoming is the speed paint of the Conquest miniature Mounted Noble Lord, using only a rattle can and the Army Painter speed paints. You will not want to miss that. If you found any of this content enjoyable, if you found any of the tips useful to you, please let me know with a like and subscribe. It's very important for a young and growing channel. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.